I sent a simple text in the family group chat. My surgery is on the 12th. I just need someone to drive me home. It shouldn't take more than an hour. My sister quickly replied, LOL, you actually thought we'd miss CABO for that. Then my mom added, don't guilt us. This trip's been planned for months. I just typed, my mistake, and left it at that. The days that followed held a twist I wasn't expecting. My sister's reply, LOL, felt dismissive, and my mom's comment about not being guilty stung. I had always gone out of my way for them, loaning money, helping with bills, even caring for our grandmother when no one else would. But now, when I needed something as simple as a ride after surgery, I was made to feel like an inconvenience. I figured I would arrange an Uber or ask a neighbor, though I wished I could turn to my family. But then days later, my mom called the hospital just to check in. What the nurse said to her completely changed their plans for CABO. That was the moment I saw everything differently. Amber, my sister, wasn't always like this. She used to braid my hair and tell me how much she loved me. But somewhere along the way, between her vlogging and vacations, I stopped being her sister and became just a backup. A bank, an assistant, always expected to give without receiving. My mom wasn't much different. She used to call me the practical one, which, as it turned out, meant the one who could be taken advantage of without a second thought. When my dad passed away, I was 23, and my insurance payout was split between Amber and me. Yet, when mom couldn't cover the mortgage, I gave her my half. Amber didn't even return my calls for weeks. When she did, she was in Mexico saying, "You should have told me earlier." As if I had no right to ask for help. I spent years working overtime to cover my bills and theirs. I had no savings, 2 herniated discs, and a health condition that landed me in the ER. When I found out I needed a minor laparoscopy, I thought, maybe this time they would step up. After all, it wasn't life-threatening. I just needed someone to drive me home and help me for a few hours. I sent the message, hoping for a simple, caring response. But instead, I was met with sarcasm from Amber and a dismissive remark from Mom. "This trip's been planned for months," she said, almost accusing me of manipulating them. I couldn't believe what I was reading. It wasn't even about the surgery anymore. It was a reminder that I didn't matter to them. All I could do was type, "My mistake." No anger, no tears, just 2 words that conveyed years of quiet frustration. I figured that would be the end of it, but it wasn't. On surgery day, everything went as planned. The doctor was kind, and the nurses were gentle. But as I woke up groggy and nauseous, the first thing I did was check my phone. No messages. No check-ins. Just Amber's Instagram story, a selfie of her sipping a coconut in a bikini. Manifesting health, wealth, and hot weather #CABO diaries. It hit me hard, and I ended up throwing up in the hospital trash can. A nurse named Claire noticed. She rubbed my back and asked if I was okay. I nodded and explained the nausea. She handed me a bottle of water and a packet of crackers. "Your ride's on its way," she said kindly. I tried to smile, but all I could think about was that my family had left me to handle everything alone. When I finally made it home, I collapsed into bed, grateful for the painkillers, but still hurt by the reality of what had just happened. 3 days later, I received a call. It was from the hospital, and the voice on the other end said, "Hi, is this Jessica Martinez?" I replied, "Yes," but my heart started racing when she continued, "This is Mary from North Lake Medical. Your mother called earlier trying to reach you. I just wanted to confirm your condition, as per your consent form." That was when I realized what had truly happened. The message from the nurse had changed everything. What my sister and mom thought was a vacation priority had been flipped when they realized how serious my situation was. She mentioned that she hadn't heard from you and was getting worried. Of course, we didn't share any details, but she was insistent. In the end, I told her that everything had gone smoothly, and that you had been discharged and taken home in an Uber. I said it flatly without much emotion. There was a moment of silence, and then Mary, sounding somewhat surprised, asked, "You didn't have anyone with you?" I gave a dry, bitter laugh. After hanging up, I checked my phone. No messages from Mom or Amber. Then just 5 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Mom messaged, "Why didn't you tell us you were alone? You should have said something." Another followed. I spoke to the hospital. That's not okay. Then came Amber's message. Wait, you went through with it alone? Are you serious? I feel bad now. Not like really bad, but you should have said something if you were desperate. That word, desperate, simmered in my stomach like poison. I didn't reply. Instead, I archived the chat on WhatsApp. But the real twist came the next day. Amber FaceTimed me. I let it ring twice before finally answering. She looked different, her face tanned, hair braided with tiny beads, but there was a tension in her eyes. Hey, she said, her voice apologetic. I didn't answer, she sighed. Look, I didn't realize you were alone. I thought maybe you had a friend or something. I remained silent. She continued. I asked you, but you didn't make it seem serious. It was a surgical procedure, technically, she said, rolling her eyes. But you're okay now, right? I stared at her, not sure what to say. Amber bit her lip. Anyway, I spoke with Mom. We're thinking of flying back early, like tomorrow. The vibes here are off. I blinked slowly. Because of my surgery? I asked flatly. Well, yeah, she muttered. And Mom's upset. She says we look like monsters, which is dramatic, but yeah. I leaned in closer to the camera, my voice even. You don't need to come back. There was silence. Wait, what? She said. I don't need anything from you, Jessica. I said, my tone final. I hung up and blocked her number when she called again. But then Mom did something unexpected. She booked a flight. She showed up at my door. I opened it, still in my robe, stitches still fresh and painful. She stood there, clutching her purse tightly, her eyes filled with tears. I didn't know, she whispered. I didn't answer. Instead, I just stared at her, because she did know. She collapsed right there on my doorstep, and that's when I realized things would never be the same again. She stood in the doorway, frozen for a full minute, staring at me like I was something fragile she didn't know how to handle anymore. Can I come in? She asked, her voice small. I didn't answer. I simply walked back to the couch, and if she wanted in, she'd have to step over her own guilt. The place wasn't messy. I'd cleaned yesterday despite the pain. But I didn't look my best. My hair was in a greasy knot, sweatpants stained from spilled soup, and the side table was cluttered with painkillers and ginger ale bottles. Mom sat down across from me, still holding her purse tightly like a shield. Jessie, she began. I had no idea you were completely alone. I looked at her unblinking. You knew, I said, my voice cold. Her jaw tightened. I didn't think you'd really go through with it without telling us more. You didn't say it was serious. I met her gaze. I told you the date. I told you I needed a ride. That was the message. She opened her mouth to respond but closed it. Amber said, LOL. I added, and for a moment, that shut her up. She shifted in her seat, glancing around as though looking for a script to follow. I think we all just assumed you were exaggerating. You've always been so independent, she said. I couldn't stop myself from replying. You mean quiet? You mean strong? No, you mean convenient. You mean I've never made you inconveniently accountable. Her face flickered with discomfort. That's not fair, she said weakly. No, Mom, I said. What's not fair is you telling me not to guilt you. When I asked for a single ride after years of carrying this family on my back like it was my job. I grabbed the pharmacy receipt from the table and tossed it toward her. That's $312 of meds I had to pay out of pocket because I couldn't use the family's insurance card anymore. The one you said we'd all share when Dad passed. But guess who maxed out the Botox sessions with Amber? Mom's face drained of color. That's not true, she muttered. It is, I shot back. I called the provider. She hit the cap last month. Mom blinked rapidly, then whispered. She said it was for migraines. She said it was from a salon in Beverly Hills. Her mouth opened and closed, struggling for words. Then all at once she broke down. You have no idea what it's like being her mother, she said, her voice trembling. Do you think it's easy? I felt a sting as she continued. Amber has always needed so much. But you were always the one who didn't ask for anything. You never complained. Because complaining doesn't change anything, right? That silence between us felt deafening. Her gaze dropped to the floor. My frustration finally spilled over. Do you know what it felt like to be lying in that hospital bed with no one around? Do you know how it feels to wake up confused and in pain? And the nurse has to hold your hand because your family is too busy lounging by the pool. Her eyes filled with tears. Jessica, I'm sorry. No, you're not sorry, I snapped. You're just panicking. You're worried about how it looks. About what your friends, the neighbors, the aunts will think. You're afraid they'll see the kind of mother you've really been. She sobbed then, but I wasn't buying it. That's not true, she whispered. It is, I said harshly. You're not here because you care. You're here because you got called out. She buried her face in her hands, but I watched her for a beat before I stood up. You should go. Her head snapped up. Jess, please. I'm tired. My stitches hurt, and your guilt isn't helping, I said, my voice flat. She stood up, clutching her purse like it was her last lifeline. Where do we go from here? She asked, her voice desperate. I met her eyes. I don't know, but not back. That's for sure. She left. The next day, Amber showed up. I didn't open the door. She pounded on it for 5 full minutes before sending a text. Open up. We need to talk. She canceled the last 2 nights of CABO early, like it was some grand favor. Be grateful, she added, as if that made everything okay. I finally opened the door, not to let her in, but to meet her eyes. She stood there in her airport sweats, designer sunglasses perched on her head, her face a mix of concern and irritation. God, you look like hell, she remarked. Thanks. Surgery does that. She sighed. Look, this got blown out of proportion. I didn't mean to sound like a jerk. I thought you had people, friends, nurses, or something. I asked you, I said, feeling the anger rise. Jess, you know how important that trip was. It was comped, a brand deal. I had to post content. I couldn't just ditch it. Her words were cold, calculating. I was in a hospital bed, Amber. And I apologized. What more do you want from me? I stared at her. I was looking at my own blood. Yet there was nothing human about her. I want you to admit it. You never intended to show up. She tilted her head, as if she didn't get it. I didn't think I had to. There it was. The truth I'd been waiting for. Amber didn't think she owed me a single thing. Not a ride, not a text, not even a thought in her busy, curated world. You're right, I said quietly. You didn't. And I don't owe you anything anymore either. Her face twisted in confusion. What's that supposed to mean? I held up my phone. It means I reached out to your sponsor and shared what happened. I told them the truth. About how you mocked your sister's surgery and used their wellness trip to avoid a family emergency. I attached screenshots. Amber's face went pale. You didn't. They pulled the campaign. I said, the words landing like a blow. She stumbled back, as though I'd slapped her. You cost me 10 grand, she shouted. You cost me 10 years. She opened her mouth, but I shut the door before she could say another word. And this time it stayed shut. The silence after the storm was cold. It was the kind of silence that feels like the stale bitterness of forgotten coffee. I sat by the window, staring out as a gray afternoon unfolded before me. For the first time in years, I felt something close to freedom. Amber hadn't messaged me since. Her Instagram went dark. The last post of her lounging by the pool with the caption #grateful vanished a day after I sent that email to her sponsor. I didn't bother checking if she got her $10,000 back. I didn't care. A few days later, I received a letter from the clinic. It was short, impersonal, and to the point. I received a notification that $312 had been refunded to my account. It was clear that the insurance company had finally caught Amber using my plan without permission. I knew this time it was over. My mother reached out soon after, trying to reconcile. She texted, apologizing, claiming she hadn't slept and felt terrible for everything she'd done. At first, I thought there was genuine remorse, but then her message shifted. She started blaming me, saying I'd always been distant, and that I made her feel like a failure. That was when I realized that this wasn't about her regret. It was about her guilt. I responded simply, if it hurts, it's because the mirror is finally clean. And I blocked her. Weeks passed. Then my cousin Jane reached out, asking if I was okay. I told her honestly, yes, finally. She sent a heart emoji, and then mentioned that my mom and Amber were telling people that I'd had an emotional breakdown, and was lashing out. I couldn't help but laugh. Sitting on my new turquoise sofa, still recovering from surgery and the emotional toll of years of silence, I laughed. Let them twist the story. I didn't care anymore because for once, I wasn't playing the role they'd written for me. A few weeks later, I returned to work. My boss, always blunt and a little gruff, looked at me and simply said, "Take whatever time you need. You're solid." In that one sentence, I received more compassion than I had in a decade from my own family. I changed the locks on my apartment. I sold the old couch, the one Amber had crashed on during her latest breakup, and bought a new one, turquoise and firm, like a reset button for my life. I also bought a coffee machine, something simple but mine. I signed up for pottery classes, something I had always wanted to do, and after 2 weeks, I held my first mug, lopsided and imperfect, but real, and I loved it. Then something unexpected happened. The clinic receptionist called, cautiously informing me that my mother had tried to assign me as her emergency contact once again. I wasn't anymore as per my request, but they just wanted me to know. I hung up, called a lawyer, and had them draft a legal notice that disavowed any future financial responsibility for both my mother and Amber. I signed it confidently. 2 months later, an unexpected message arrived from an unfamiliar Facebook account. It was from Jake, Amber's ex. He thanked me for standing up to them, saying he was the first person who'd ever held them accountable. His words made me cry, not from pain, but from relief. Someone saw it too. I wasn't crazy, and I wasn't alone. I've never been one for fresh starts, but this didn't feel like a new beginning. It felt like the closing of doors that should have been shut a long time ago. Now I wake up without dread. I no longer check my phone for apologies that will never come. My mornings are peaceful, making coffee in my kitchen, sitting by the window in my turquoise chair, and simply breathing. I smile because for the first time, I'm living a life that is truly mine. It's been 4 months now, since I asked for help and was laughed at, since I lay on that hospital bed shaking from anesthesia, and realized that the only hands holding mine were those of strangers. It's been months since I said those 2 words, my mistake, and watched my old life fall apart. And I'm not just okay with it, I'm grateful for it. I don't miss them, which is what surprised me the most. I thought cutting ties would feel like grief, like losing a part of me. But it felt more like shedding dead skin, suffocating and no longer needed. My life is quieter now, but it's also louder in the right ways. I hear my own thoughts again. I sleep soundly at night without fear of the next call, the next crisis, or the next emergency. There's no more guilt attached to my phone buzzing. It doesn't ring for someone wanting me to drop everything, clean up their mess, or bail them out. Amber still tries occasionally, creating a new number to send me texts accusing me of ruining her life. But when I saw the last message, I smiled. Yes, I was happy now. I've started writing again just for myself, journaling, and processing the things I never allowed myself to express. Like the fact that I had always been the scapegoat, never the support system. That being needed isn't the same as being loved. And that forgiveness without accountability only perpetuates harm. These were painful truths, but they were necessary. I've been redecorating too. Every part of my apartment that once felt heavy with silent sacrifices now feels like a reflection of me. I've got plants that I'll probably forget to water, art I bought simply because it made me laugh, and that lopsided mug from pottery class, which is now my favorite. It reminds me that imperfection can still hold warmth. I ran into Maya, an old high school friend, at the farmer's market last week. She asked how my family was and I replied, "Where they belong, far away." She smiled, as if she understood more than she let on, and said, "I always wondered how you stayed so calm growing up. Now I get it. You weren't calm. You were surviving." That hit me harder than I expected because she was right. I wasn't calm. I was controlled. I was silenced. I was expected to be perfect. But not anymore. If you're reading this and you feel like your family thinks love means guilt, obligation, and self-sacrifice, if they make you feel selfish for setting boundaries or for saying no, or if you've ever laid awake wondering if you're the problem because they keep treating you like one, know this. You're not broken. You're not dramatic. You're not cruel. You're just done. And done is powerful. Because done doesn't mean bitter. It means reborn. The last message I sent to my family said, I hope someday you realize what you lost. But even if you don't, I haven't lost myself. Not anymore. And for the first time in my life, I meant every single word. The ride I asked for never came, but I still made it home, on my own.